man, the end of 2020 is really picking up. We have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about in the NHL, and honestly, it's not even just the NHL. We're having a whole bunch of news outside of hockey, outside of sports in general. On the global scale, we're having the vaccines coming out, countries ordering a whole bunch of doses for a whole bunch of people. In the gaming world, we had Cyberpunk 2077 removed from the PS Store because it's so poor on the previous generation of consoles, that in which I do have, actually. But we're going back to the NHL and talking about some other cool stuff, because if we go over to what was written on the Ottawa Sun, we had a few very interesting ideas that were actually published here on the Ottawa Sun. The article is Cracks of Dawn. Duclair and Ottawa need each other like Mike Hoffman and Boston. Now, I will say, this article goes over a few ideas that are actually mentioned on TSN's That's Hockey segment, where the very wise Dave Poulin projected that these ideas that are mentioned in the article are going to take place. This article goes over the main two, which are indeed highlighted in the title: Hoffman, Boston, Duclair, Ottawa again. My extended apologies, though, are going out to Dave Poulin because that idea is kind of outdated now, the whole Duclair and Ottawa thing, because yesterday Duclair signed with the Florida Panthers. I will say, though, this article written by Don Brennan highlighting Poulin's thoughts was published 2 days ago, so yeah, it's definitely not invalid, I guess, to bring it up in this context. But indeed, it's those two ideas that are right off the top. They're mentioned in the headline and they're discussed thoroughly in this article. Mike Hoffman with the Bruins, whether or not he could play and get 30 goals alongside of a Jake DeBrusk or a David Krejci, and whether or not it would actually be the best idea for a guy like Duclair to just suck it up and go back to Ottawa. But when it comes to Cory Perry, this is an idea that kind of got a few Leafs fans up in a way talkative, let's just say. I did see this show up on my Twitter feed once in a while, which is why we're discussing it over here. This is what Poulin said on TSN about Cory Perry. Go home. Join Jason Spezza and Joe Thornton and have some fun. They won't need you until the playoffs anyway. Could we see a Cory Perry-like player go back home to the Toronto Maple Leafs? That's our discussion here in this video, and man, it's one that I really just... you think about the Toronto Maple Leafs, and you think about the crazy Leafs fans that are out there, because I get it. Leafs fans, you might get mad at me for saying that your guys are crazy, but come on, you're crazy. Along with the Habs fans, the Canucks fans, the Canadian fans in the big Canadian cities, yeah, we're kind of nuts. And when it comes to things like this, where the Toronto Maple Leafs are out here in the market, maybe even potentially gathering up the players who are from Toronto and bringing them home, so to speak, we've only really had one instance where the number one big guy ended up doing that. John Tavares. Steven Stamkos, it didn't happen. Drew Doughty, nope, it didn't happen. Now we have ourselves a position where Cory Perry was one of those top guys. Remember, Cory Perry scored 50 goals 10 years ago, which is something that absolutely blows my mind, but it still happened. It's why he won the Hart Trophy that year. It's why Daniel Sedin didn't that year, but nowadays, Cory Perry is coming off of some very legit Stanley Cup Finals experience, and he's back in it again with the free agent markets and the contracts. Now, last time we spoke about Cory Perry, there was a rumor going around saying that he was potentially interested and actually receiving mutual interest too in the Ottawa Senators, and we discussed whether or not the Sens could go out here, acquire Cory Perry, who's a guy who is kind of slow but who can score some pretty nice goals once in a while, and who over time, I guess, has just kind of withered away every other aspect of his game aside from that point production that still somewhat exists to a limited capacity than before. But I will say, Cory Perry in the most recent Stanley Cup Finals was indeed one of the more important players for the Dallas Stars. We saw the Stars kind of stop scoring towards the end, and Cory Perry was one of the only guys who actually started doing that. So in some weird, twisted reality, I guess you could say that Cory Perry was one of the more clutch players for the Dallas Stars. Even though they did lose, they still had some offense from this guy towards the end there. And hey, the article kind of says it himself. You're not really getting a Cory Perry on your squad to be a number one point producer like he was 10 years ago. No, you're getting him because you want some extra depth. The idea here proposes, hey, just play with Spezza and Thornton and put together what would have been one of the best lines of the mid-2000s had it actually been assembled that way. But no, it's 2021, and these guys are way older now than they were back when they were in their primes. For an extended look here on Cory Perry and the Toronto Maple Leafs, let's go over onto Spectre's Hockey. This is their article from December 17th. There is a little piece written here by Lyle Richardson, the analyst, the Spectre himself who comprises these articles and who writes about this stuff. The Leafs have Mitch Marner, William Nylander, Wayne Simmons, and Jimmy Vesey as their right wingers for this season. Nylander or Vesey could shift to left wing to make room for Cory Perry, but the Leafs are already above the cap by $1.04 million. They'll get under the cap by demoting a player or two, but that still won't leave room for Cory Perry. Unless they do some cap juggling, or maybe by acquiring another LTIR contract or a cost-cutting trade. So, pretty much, Lyle Richardson is coming over here and spoiling us and saying, yeah, it's probably not going to happen unless the Toronto Maple Leafs really made an effort to free up some cap space, and therefore opening up themselves the ability to signing a guy like Cory Perry, who, in his most recent contract, if we go over to the cap-friendly page of Cory Perry, was making a nice $1.5 million in 2019-2020. Now, remember, Cory Perry was indeed bought out by the Anaheim Ducks on that huge $8.625 AAV deal, so money's probably the last thing that Cory Perry is looking for, especially in this day and age. I just think it'd be really interesting to see a nice scoring depth line of Thornton, Spezza, and Perry. Last time I believe we saw Perry and Thornton together was the 2010 Vancouver Olympic Games, which was a very long time ago. Granted, Jason Spezza wasn't there, and in fact, I don't think Spezza ever made the Olympic team, did he? I'm not really too sure. Let's look that up right now. Yeah, no, I don't think he actually made the Olympics once, but Cory Perry was there with Joe Thornton, Jumbo Joe himself, back in 2010, where they won gold in Rogers Arena. He also was with, of course, Ryan Getzlaf, his teammate, partner in crime, etc. Then you had, of course, the Sidney Crosbys on the team as well. Oh my goodness, I'm actually looking at the numbers right here. Cory Perry back in 2010 had 5 points in 7 games played, was 10th on his team in scoring, and Joe Thornton had 2 points. Now, that was a decade ago, and I was actually 10 when that happened. Or actually, no, it was 9, yeah, because it happened before my birthday that year. So I'm not really too sure what happened with Jumbo Joe. But if we want to see ourselves some vindication over here, some really interesting chemistry-building opportunities from the Ontario boys who have had better days in the NHL, then Kyle Dubas, man, go out there, get yourselves a Cory Perry, a guy who could really provide some weird, twisted version of grit, because Cory Perry, at the end of the day, he knows how to get under his opponent's skin. You could say the Leafs could use more of that, I guess, if you're going to take that argument, but Perry, 35 years old, Thornton, like 42 years old, Jason Spezza over here, he's 37 years old, so if the Leafs want to go out here and make what is going to be, I guess, the cheapest, oldest bottom 6 in the league, hey, why not try Cory Perry? Of course, after you make some other moves too, but talk to me in the comments what you think about this whole idea. Obviously, we're just kind of spitting here, going after one thing that was said on TSN and published in an article. I want you to tell me in the comments whether or not you think Cory Perry should, could, or would go to the Toronto Maple Leafs. We saw some articles earlier on talking about how he might have interest in coming home to the other Ontario team in Ottawa, but if it's Toronto asking on his door, what do you think goes down? Talk to me in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.